The great chamber floated in the darkness of space, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of distant stars. Inside, representatives from 847 different species sat in their designated seats. Some had scales, others had fur. Some breathed oxygen, others needed methane tanks. But today, they all watched the same thing unfold before their eyes. Ambassador Ji-Woo Kim stood at the human section, his hands clasped behind his back. Next to him, Ambassador Nari Park reviewed something on her datapad. They both wore simple dark blue uniforms with the Earth India on their shoulders. Nothing fancy, nothing threatening. War Marshal Threxus rose from his seat. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with deep red scales and 4 powerful arms. His species, the Drakmor Collective, controlled 12 star systems and had a military force that made most council members nervous. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the translation systems. Members of the council, I come before you today with a declaration. The Drakmor Collective will be taking control of the Sol system, specifically the third planet these humans call Earth. We claim it as a tributary world under Drakmor protection. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several ambassadors shifted in their seats. High Chancellor Vexrin, who led the council sessions, raised one of his 4 arms for silence. His species had been part of the council for over 10,000 years. He had seen many conflicts, but this was unusual. War Marshal Threxus, this is a serious claim. Earth is a recognized council member world. What justification do you offer for this action? Threxus laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that made the chamber's walls vibrate slightly. Justification? Look at them, Chancellor. Humans have been part of this council for only 50 years. 50! They still use chemical propulsion for most of their ships. They fight with kinetic weapons, throwing pieces of metal at each other like primitive savages. Their technology is centuries behind even the youngest council races. He activated a holographic display. Images of Earth's military appeared in the air above the council floor. Ships with visible exhaust ports. Soldiers carrying bullet-firing rifles. Tanks that rolled on treads. Aircraft that needed air to fly. This is what they call a military, Threxus continued, his voice dripping with contempt. We have studied them for the past year. Their strongest weapons are fusion devices they call nuclear bombs. Bombs! They still use explosives. Our shields can absorb such attacks without even flickering. Our fleet could take their entire system in less than 1 standard week. More murmurs. Some species nodded in agreement. Earth's technology was indeed considered primitive by galactic standards. When humans first achieved faster-than-light travel and made contact with the Council, many had been surprised that such a young civilization had even reached the stars. Ji-Woo remained perfectly still. His face showed nothing. No fear, no anger. If anything, there was the slightest curve at the corner of his mouth. Almost a smile. Nari glanced at him and returned her attention to her datapad. High Chancellor Vexrin looked troubled. Ambassador Kim, do you wish to respond to these claims? Ji-Woo stepped forward calmly. His movements were smooth and controlled. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost friendly. War Marshal Threxus has done his research. I appreciate that. It shows diligence. However, I would like to request a grace period of 72 hours before any military action begins. This would allow us to evacuate civilians and follow proper protocols. Threxus barked another laugh. You think you can? Evacuate an entire planet in 3 days? How charmingly naive. But no, human. There will be no grace period. You've had 50 years to prepare for the realities of galactic politics. My fleet is already assembled. We depart for your system within the hour. Several council members looked uncomfortable now. The Keltorian ambassador, whose species prided themselves on honor, spoke up. This seems aggressive, War Marshal. Perhaps negotiations? There is nothing to negotiate, Threxus interrupted. The strong rule the weak. This is the way of the universe. Humans have resources we need. Their planet sits in a strategic location. They cannot defend it. Therefore, it becomes ours. The Council's charter allows for territorial expansion under these circumstances. Technically, he was right. The Council's ancient laws did have provisions for such actions, though they were rarely invoked. Usually, the threat alone was enough to bring smaller species into line. High Chancellor Vexrin's expression darkened. This council was founded on principles of peaceful cooperation. What you propose goes against the spirit of our union. The spirit? Threxus spread his forearms wide. The spirit is maintained by power, Chancellor. You know this. The council exists because the strong species decided to create it. When a species is too weak to defend itself, it has no place among the stars. We are simply correcting a mistake made 50 years ago when humans were granted membership. Throughout all of this, Jiwoo and Nari remained calm. Other human representatives sat quietly in their section, showing no signs of panic, no desperate calls to their homeworld, no frantic preparations. They simply watched and listened. This caught the attention of some of the older council members. Ambassador Yuna Song from the Merchant Guild Coalition, who had worked closely with humans on trade agreements, narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. She had always found humans to be strange. They adapted too quickly. Their merchant ships were officially classified as civilian vessels, yet they moved faster than military craft from many other species. Their obsolete technology somehow accomplished things that should have been impossible. Threxus was finishing his speech now, his chest puffed with pride. My fleet consists of 3,000 warships. Each one carries enough firepower to level a continent. We have planet-breaker missiles, atmospheric incinerators, and quantum disruptors. The humans have bullets and bombs. This will not be a war. It will be a lesson. A reminder to all council members about the realities of power. He turned to face Jiwoo directly. Do you have any last words before we claim your world, human? Jiwoo tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question carefully. Then he turned to Nari and said, just loud enough for the nearby translation systems to pick up. Should we tell them, or let them find out? Nari didn't look up from her data pad. Her tone was casual, almost bored. Let them find out. They wouldn't believe us anyway. Threxus frowned, confused by this exchange. What are you babbling about? But Jiwoo just smiled politely. Nothing important, War Marshal. I wish you a safe journey to our solar system. Please give my regards to your fleet commander. High Chancellor Vexrin watched this interaction with growing unease. He had been part of the Council for 300 years. He had seen species bluff when faced with extinction. He had seen desperate civilizations make threats they couldn't back up. But he had never seen a species face certain destruction with such perfect calm. Something was wrong here. Something the Council didn't understand about these humans. Threxus dismissed the strange behavior with a wave of his hand. Your bravery in the face of defeat is admirable, if foolish. My fleet leaves now. In 14 standard days, we will arrive at Earth. Prepare yourselves for Drakmor rule. He marched out of the chamber, his delegation following behind him. Throughout the room, ambassadors began talking among themselves. Some looked worried. Others seemed satisfied that the human problem would be resolved. Only a few, like High Chancellor Vexrin and Ambassador Yuna Song, continued to watch the human delegation with concerned expressions, because Jiwoo Kim was smiling now. A real smile. And for some reason, that smile was far more frightening than any threat Threxus had made. High Chancellor Vexrin couldn't sleep. Not that his species needed much sleep anyway, but tonight his mind refused to rest. He kept seeing that smile on Ambassador Jiwoo's face. That strange, knowing smile that suggested secrets the Council didn't understand. 2 days had passed since Threxus announced his invasion. The Drakmor fleet had departed on schedule, heading toward the Sol system. Throughout the Council station, there was an uncomfortable tension. Most species were watching to see what would happen. Some placed bets on how long Earth would last. The estimates ranged from 3 hours to 2 days. But the humans? They went about their business as if nothing was happening. Vexrin made a decision. He sent a private communication to the human embassy requesting a meeting. Within an hour, he found himself in a small conference room with Ambassador Ji Woo, a senior diplomat named Minho Lee, and a military liaison called Haiyan Shou, who had just arrived from Earth. "Thank you for meeting with me," Vexrin began, settling into a chair designed for his body type. "I hope you understand this conversation is unofficial. I come as a concerned observer, not as the Council's representative." Minho Lee nodded. He was older than Ji Woo, with gray hair and a face that had seen many difficult negotiations. "We appreciate your concern, Chancellor. How can we help you?" "Help me? Your world faces invasion in 12 days. Shouldn't I be asking how I can help you?" Vexrin leaned forward. "Ambassador Kim, I must ask directly. Why aren't you preparing? Evacuation procedures? Why has Earth not mobilized its defense forces? Your government has been strangely quiet." Ji Woo exchanged glances with Minho and Haiyan. Then Minho spoke carefully. "Chancellor, what do you know about the restrictions placed on humanity when we joined the Council?" "Restrictions?" Vexrin's brow ridge furrowed. "Standard integration protocols, I assume. Technology sharing limitations, trade regulations, territorial boundaries." "No," Haiyan interrupted. He opened a case he'd been carrying and pulled out a data crystal. "We were classified as Species Restriction Level 7. Do you know what that means?" Vexrin felt a chill run through his body. "Level 7? That classification is used for species deemed potentially dangerous to galactic stability. Species with aggressive tendencies or destabilizing technologies." "Exactly," Minho said quietly. "When Earth was evaluated for Council membership 50 years ago, your scientists and military analysts studied us carefully, very carefully. They found things that worried them. So humanity was offered a choice. We could join the Council, but we had to agree to certain limitations." Haiyan activated the data crystal. Holographic images filled the air between them. Vexrin watched, his 4 eyes widening. First came footage of Earth's wars. Not recent conflicts, but ancient ones. World War II, they called it. Cities turned to ash by firebombing. Entire populations destroyed. And then the nuclear weapons. 2 cities evaporated in blinding light. The death toll numbers made Vexrin's stomach turn. "This was 80 years before we achieved faster-than-light travel," Minho explained. "We were already capable of planetary destruction using our own resources. Imagine what we could do now." More images appeared. Plans for weapons that had never been built. Project Sundial, designed to crack a planet's crust. Weaponized diseases that could target specific genetic markers. Relativistic kill missiles that would strike targets with the force of small stars. "We dismantled these projects," Ji Woo said, "or sealed them away. When we joined the Council, we agreed to restrict 94% of our military capability. We took apart our most dangerous weapons. We limited our fleet sizes. We accepted observers to ensure compliance." Vexrin stared at the images in horror. "Why would your species develop such terrible things?" "Because we were afraid," Minho answered simply. "We spent thousands of years fighting each other for resources, territory, ideology. We got very, very good at killing. Too good. By the time we reached the stars, we realized we needed to change. So when your scouts found us, we saw it as an opportunity. A chance to be part of something better. Hyen brought up more recent files, but we didn't forget how to fight. We couldn't. Our military continued training. Our scientists kept researching. We just limited ourselves, voluntarily, because we wanted peace. Wanted, Vexrin repeated, catching the past tense. But now? The three humans looked at each other. Then Jiwoo spoke, his voice hard. The Drakmor Collective broke the peace treaty first. They declared war on a council member world. Under council law, that voids our restriction agreement. Earth's government sent out a priority alert 6 hours after Threxus made his announcement. They're unsealing the vaults. The vaults? Vexrin felt his blood run cold. Where we stored everything, Hyen said quietly. All the weapons, all the technology, all the plans we locked away 50 years ago. It's all coming back online. Vexrin stood abruptly, his legs feeling weak. How many ships does Earth actually have in active service, under council restrictions? About 200, Minho answered. But we never stopped building. We just stored them. Our shipyards have been running continuously for 50 years. Every ship that went into storage was fully functional, just powered down and hidden. How many? Vexrin demanded. Hyen smiled grimly. Enough. Before Vexrin could press further, Minho added, and that's just military vessels. Our civilian ships were built to council specifications, yes. But human engineering has certain advantages. Our cargo haulers are fast because we designed them with military principles. Our mining ships are tough because we built them like warships. If we needed to convert civilian infrastructure to military purposes, we could do it in days. Vexrin sat back down heavily. You've been preparing for war this entire time. No, Jiwoo corrected. We've been preparing to defend ourselves. There's a difference. We hoped we'd never need to use any of this. We genuinely wanted to be peaceful council members, but we're not naive. We knew there were species like the Drakmor out here. Species that see kindness as weakness. The Drakmor fleet consists of 3,000 warships, Vexrin said weakly. We know, Hyen replied. We've been tracking them since they left port. 31 civilian human ships are currently, coincidentally, along their route, observing and gathering data. The Drakmor think they're just merchants and miners. They don't realize every single one of those ships is transmitting detailed tactical information back to Earth. Minho pulled up another display. We've been scanning their vessels for 2 days now. We know their shield frequencies, their weapon ranges, their reactor signatures. We know how fast they can turn, how quickly they can charge their weapons, even what their crews eat for breakfast. Vexrin felt like his world was tilting. The council needs to know about this. We need to send mediators, negotiate a peace before this escalates. It's too late for that, Jiwoo said, his voice regretful but firm. Threxus made his choice. He declared war in front of the entire council. If we back down now, every aggressive species in the galaxy will see humans as easy targets. We'll spend the next century fighting off invasions. No, this ends with the Drakmor. Ends how? Vexrin asked, though he feared the answer. The three humans were quiet for a moment. Then Hyen spoke, his voice cold and professional. Earth's military. Command sent a message to the Drakmor fleet this morning. One last warning. Turn back, and there will be peace. Continue forward, and there will be consequences. And if they don't turn back? Jiwoo's expression was sad. Then the galaxy is about to remember something it never knew about humanity. We're not warriors who became diplomats, Chancellor. We're warriors who chose diplomacy. And when someone forces us back into war, he paused. We've had 10,000 years of practice. Vexrin looked at the data still floating in the air. Images of weapons that could destroy worlds. Statistics about human military capacity. Files marked with warnings in multiple languages. And he realized with growing dread that the Council had made a terrible mistake 50 years ago. They hadn't civilized humanity. They had just convinced them to put their weapons in storage. The Council's intelligence chamber was crowded for the first time in years. Representatives from over 200 species packed into the observation deck, all watching the same holographic displays. The Drakmor fleet was now 7 days into its journey toward Earth, and strange reports were flooding in. High Chancellor Vexren stood at the center of the chamber, his forearms crossed as he studied the incoming data. Next to him, Ambassador Ji Wu watched calmly, while a human military officer named Admiral Taiyang Quan stood in full uniform, his posture straight and formal. "Explain this," demanded Ambassador Kelrus from the Thorin Confederacy, pointing at a display. "Your civilian vessels are following the Drakmor fleet. They're not fleeing. They're escorting them. We're observing," Admiral Taiyang said simply, "gathering intelligence. Standard procedure when hostile forces approach your territory." "Standard procedure would be to evacuate," Kelrus shot back, "or to mobilize your military. But your defense forces remain in the Sol system, making no moves." "To intercept." Taiyang exchanged glances with Ji Wu, who nodded slightly. The Admiral took a deep breath and activated his own data display. "Members of the Council, I've been authorized to reveal certain information about Earth's actual defensive capabilities. I believe it's time you understood what the Drakmor are flying into." The holographic display shifted. A three-dimensional map of Earth's solar system appeared, rotating slowly. At first glance, it looked normal. Planets orbiting a yellow star. Asteroid belts. The usual cosmic debris that then Taiyang touched to control. Red dots began appearing throughout the system. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. "What are those?" someone asked. "Defense platforms," Taiyang answered. "Automated weapon systems. We've spent the last 50 years building them and placing them throughout our solar system. They're disguised as asteroids, satellites, space debris. Each one is equipped with railguns, missile pods, and electronic warfare systems." The red dots kept multiplying. 10,000. 20,000. Finally, the number stopped at 47,312. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Vexren felt his stomach drop. 47,000 weapons platforms? The Council Charter limits defensive systems to 500 per system. The Council Charter limits visible military installations, Ji Wu corrected gently. These platforms were classified as asteroid monitoring stations and mining equipment, which they are. They just happen to have additional functions. A counselor from the Valkyrie Union stood up angrily. "This is a violation of trust. You've been militarizing your system this entire time." "We've been preparing to defend our home," Taiyang replied, his voice sharp. "There's a difference. Every single one of these platforms is defensive in nature. They can't leave the solar system. They can't attack anyone unless they enter our space first. We followed the letter of Council law." Councillor Daeyun Park, another human representative, stepped forward. He was younger than the others, with sharp eyes, and an intelligence officer's careful demeanor. "If I may add some context, Earth's military philosophy is based on 10,000 years of warfare. We've fought in every terrain, every condition, every possible scenario. Desert, jungle, ocean, mountains, Arctic, space, even underwater. We've developed tactics for guerrilla warfare, asymmetric warfare, total warfare, and everything in between." He activated another display. Images of human history began flowing past. Ancient warriors with swords and spears. Medieval armies with siege weapons. Modern soldiers with guns and tanks. Future troops with powered armor and energy shields. "We never stopped fighting," Bayon continued. "Even during our 50 years as council members, We maintained our military training. Every Earth nation still has armed forces. We still conduct war games and combat simulations. Because we know, deep in our bones, that peace must be defended. But you're a young species, protested Ambassador Kelris. You only achieved space travel 200 years ago. How can you claim 10,000 years of military experience? Dayan smiled grimly. Because we've been fighting each other for that long. Before we reached the stars, we spent millennia perfecting the art of war on our own planet. We fought over water, food, land, resources, ideas, religions, everything imaginable. We got very, very good at it. He brought up a specific image. A young human soldier, barely 20 years old, standing in muddy trenches. This man wasn't a super soldier. He wasn't genetically enhanced or cybernetically augmented. He was just a trained human. And yet he and millions like him fought in wars so terrible, they shaped our entire civilization. We learned strategy, tactics, logistics, psychological warfare, all while killing each other with increasingly efficient weapons. Admiral Taiyang took over again. When we reached the stars and found the council, we were honestly relieved. We thought we could finally stop fighting. We sealed away our worst weapons. We limited our military. We tried to be peaceful, but we never forgot how to fight. We couldn't afford to. He zoomed the display into Earth itself. The planet looked peaceful, with white clouds and blue oceans. Then another layer activated. Underground facilities began appearing on the map. Hundreds of them. This is our nuclear arsenal, Taiyang said quietly. Or what's left of it. At our peak, before joining the Council, Earth had over 70,000 nuclear weapons. We dismantled most of them as a gesture of good faith. We now maintain a stockpile of 5,000. Still enough to sterilize 200 planets. The chamber was silent now. Even the most aggressive species looked uncomfortable. We have biological weapons we've never used, Taiyang continued. Chemical weapons we sealed in bunkers. Kinetic bombardment systems that can drop tungsten rods from orbit with the force of small nuclear explosions. We have submarines that can hide in oceans for months. Stealth aircraft that your best sensors can't detect. And we have soldiers who train every single day for combat they hope will never come. Dayan added, Earth's greatest warriors weren't considered special by our standards. They were just trained, disciplined, experienced. We don't breed super soldiers because we don't need to. We take ordinary humans and turn them into effective fighters through education, training, and practice. Any human can become a soldier. That's terrifying if you think about it. The display shifted again, showing the Drakmor fleet's current position. They were approaching the Kuiper Belt, the outermost edge of Earth's solar system. They'll reach that point in approximately 4 hours, Taiyang said. At which point, Earth's government will send them one final warning. Turn back and live. Continue forward and face the consequences. What consequences? High Chancellor Vexrin asked, his voice barely a whisper. Taiyang's expression was hard. Total war. The kind of war humanity has been avoiding for 50 years. The kind of war we're experts at. The kind of war the Drakmor can't possibly win. He activated another control. A holographic display zoomed out, showing not just the solar system, but the paths of hundreds of objects moving through space. These are mines we've placed along every approach vector to Earth. These are our patrol ships, currently powered down and invisible to normal sensors. These are our missile batteries, our gun emplacements, our electronic warfare stations. And this, he said, highlighting Earth's moon, is our primary weapons platform. We hollowed out the dark side over 30 years and installed our most powerful defensive systems. The Drakmor think they're attacking a primitive planet. They're actually flying into the most heavily fortified system in this sector of the galaxy. Vexrin looked at Ji-woo, you've been preparing for this since the day you joined the council. We've been hoping it would never happen, Ji-woo corrected. But yes, we prepared. Because hope is not a strategy. Peace is maintained by the willingness to fight for it. The Drakmor thought we were weak because we chose diplomacy. They're about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. As if on cue, an alert sounded. The Drakmor fleet had reached the Kuiper Belt. On the display, everyone could see the message Earth's government transmitted to the approaching warships. It was simple. Just 3 words in every known language. Turn back now. War Marshal Threxus's response came through quickly, broadcast on open channels so the whole galaxy could hear. His laughter was mocking, cruel. You think to threaten us with words? We are Drakmor. We fear nothing. Charge all weapons. We will crush these pathetic humans and claim their world. Admiral Taiyang's face showed no emotion. He simply said, so be it. And throughout Earth's solar system, 47,000 weapons platforms came online at once. War Marshal Threxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, watching the view screen with satisfaction. His fleet of 3,000 warships spread out behind him in perfect formation. They had crossed most of the distance to Earth, and so far, there had been no resistance. Pathetic, he muttered. These humans talk bravely, but do nothing. Where are their defenses? Where are their ships? His tactical officer, a younger Drakmor named Vekran, studied his instruments nervously. Sir, I'm detecting some unusual readings in the asteroid belt ahead. Multiple power signatures. Mining equipment, Threxus dismissed. Or those civilian vessels that have been following us. Ignore them. How long until we reach the human homeworld? 6 hours at current speed, sir. Threxus smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent. Prepare the planet breaker missiles. We'll give these humans a demonstration of real power before we land our troops. Back at the council station, hundreds of ambassadors crowded around holographic displays showing the battle space. High Chancellor Vexrin stood next to Admiral Taiyang and Ambassador Ji-woo, watching silently. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. They're approaching Mars orbit, Taiyang said calmly, as if discussing the weather. Fleet Commander Jisoo should be initiating the first phase any moment now. Fleet Commander? Vexrin asked. I thought you said your ships were staying near Earth? Ji-woo smiled slightly. We said our defense forces remain in the Sol system. That's true. What we didn't mention is that Fleet Commander Jisoo Han leads our outer perimeter forces. They've been in position for 3 days. On the display, the Drakmor fleet continued forward confidently. They passed through the Kuiper Belt without incident, heading deeper into the solar system. Threxus was probably feeling very pleased with himself. Then everything changed. The asteroids moved. What the Drakmor had assumed were random space rocks suddenly activated. Thousands of them. They weren't asteroids at all, but weapons platforms covered in reflective coating that made them invisible to most sensors. Within 2 seconds, they all fired at once. Railgun projectiles shot through space at incredible speeds. Not energy beams that shields could absorb. Not missiles that point defense could shoot down. Solid tungsten rods accelerated to 40% the speed of light, hitting with kinetic force that could punch through any known armor. The Drakmor fleet's shields were designed to stop energy weapons. They were useless against physical impacts traveling that fast. 600 Drakmor ships exploded in the first 90 seconds. On the bridge of his flagship, Threxus staggered as the ship rocked from nearby explosions. What's happening? Where did those attacks come from? Everywhere. Vekran shouted, his voice panicked. The asteroids, sir. They're weapons platforms. Thousands of them. Our shields aren't stopping the projectiles. Impossible. Shields stop everything. not solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds. Sir, we've lost contact with the third battle group. The fifth is reporting 70% casualties. The ninth, another explosion cut him off as a railgun round grazed their flagship's hull. The ship's armor held, but barely. From Jupiter's moons, more weapons opened fire. These were larger railguns, fixed installations that had been disguised as research stations. The projectiles they fired were bigger, faster, more devastating. Another 200 Drakmor ships were destroyed. At the council station, ambassadors watched in stunned silence. The battle, if you could even call it that, was completely one-sided. The Drakmor fleet was being torn apart, and they hadn't even seen their attackers yet. "Sweet mercy," whispered Ambassador Kelrus. "They're slaughtering them." "They're defending themselves," Jiwo corrected quietly. "There's a difference." On the display, a new ship appeared. It seemed to materialize out of nowhere, dropping from some kind of stealth mode. The vessel was sleek and dark, with lines that suggested speed and purpose. Captain Soman Bey's voice came through the communication channel. "This is the UESS Shadow Walker to Drakmor Fleet. You have entered Earth's defensive perimeter without authorization. You have refused multiple warnings to withdraw. You are now engaged in combat with United Earth forces. I strongly suggest immediate surrender." Threxus roared in fury. "One ship? You send one ship to mock us? Destroy it." 20 Drakmor warships turned their weapons toward the Shadow Walker and fired. Energy beams and missiles filled the space where the human ship had been, but it wasn't there anymore. The Shadow Walker moved with impossible agility, dodging attacks that should have been unavoidable. Then it returned fire. The weapons it used made counselors gasp. They looked like gravitational distortions, creating localized fields of intense force. Where they hit, Drakmor ships simply crumpled, crushed by their own mass as gravity went wrong around them. "Gravity mines," Admiral Taiyang explained. "We learned you can't shield against gravitational forces. So we developed weapons that manipulate local spacetime. Crude compared to what's theoretically possible, but effective. 10 more Drakmor ships were destroyed by these strange weapons. The rest of the fleet began to panic, their formations breaking apart as ships tried to avoid the invisible attacks. Then the real horror began. From the direction of Earth's sun, beams of concentrated energy lanced out. Not lasers, not plasma. These were solar flares, artificially created and directed by massive collectors orbiting the star itself. Engineer Junho Shin's voice came through the channel, calm and professional. "Solar weapons platform Helios 1 online. Adjusting targeting parameters. Firing." The beams were pure concentrated sunlight, focused to a point where temperatures exceeded the core of most stars. Drakmor shields, designed to protect against energy weapons, tried to absorb the attacks. They failed instantly. The energy was too much, too concentrated. Ships didn't explode. They simply vaporized. Another 300 Drakmor vessels ceased to exist. "This isn't a battle," High Chancellor Vexrin said, his voice hollow. "This is an execution." "No," Jiwo replied, his tone sad. "This is a warning. Watch." Fleet Commander Jisu's voice broadcast across all channels. "Drakmor Fleet, you have now lost approximately 1,000 ships. That represents 1/3 of your force. I am offering surrender terms. Power down your weapons, drop your shields, and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be treated according to Council conventions for prisoners of war. You will be fed, given medical care, and eventually returned to your people. This is your only chance." There was silence. Then Threxus's voice, shaking with rage and something that might have been fear. "You think we would surrender to primitives? We are Drakmor. We do not surrender. All ships full speed ahead. Crush them. The remaining 2,000 Drakmor warships accelerated toward Earth, their weapons charging. They were trying to rush past the defensive perimeter to reach the planet itself where they could threaten the population. Fleet Commander Jisu sighed. The sound was clear over the channel. Understood. Activating long-shot protocol. May the ancestors forgive us. From various points in the solar system, objects began appearing on sensors. They were moving fast. Very fast. 0.47 light speed, to be exact. The Drakmor computers calculated their trajectories and went crazy with warnings. What are those? Someone in the council chamber asked. Relativistic kill missiles, Admiral Taiyang answered quietly. We launched them 3 years ago, accelerating them gradually to near light speed. We've had them waiting in strategic positions, just in case. At that velocity, they don't need explosives. The kinetic energy alone is sufficient. The missiles struck. Each one hit with the force of multiple nuclear weapons. The Drakmor ships had no chance to evade, no time to react. One moment they were charging forward. The next moment, they were debris. 600 more ships gone in less than a minute. The surviving Drakmor fleet, now reduced to less than 400 vessels, tried to retreat. But they found themselves surrounded. Human ships that had been waiting in silent mode activated all around them. These weren't the massive battleships the Drakmor expected. They were smaller, faster, more maneuverable. And there were hundreds of them. Captain Summon's voice came through again. Drakmor fleet, your escape routes are blocked. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, or we will be forced to destroy you completely. This is your final warning. On his flagship's bridge, Threxus looked around wildly. His ship was damaged. His fleet was devastated. And the humans had barely scratched their actual military force. He could see on his sensors that Earth's main battle fleet hadn't even left orbit. They hadn't needed to. This can't be happening, he whispered. We are Drakmor. We are powerful. We are feared. You were feared, Vekran said quietly. But they are human. Threxus's hand moved toward the controls for his planet-killer weapons. If he was going to die, he would take Earth with him. But when he activated the system, nothing happened. The weapons didn't respond. What? Why aren't they firing? Vekran checked his console, his face going pale. Sir, our entire weapons grid has been compromised. There's foreign code in our systems. It's everywhere. They've locked us out of our own weapons. At the council station, Intelligence Officer Dayan smiled grimly. We've had agents infiltrating Drakmor computer networks for weeks. Did they really think those civilian ships were just watching? We were also hacking every single vessel in their fleet, installing backdoors and kill switches. We can shut down their ships whenever we want. On the view screen, Threxus finally accepted the inevitable. His voice, when he spoke, had lost all its earlier arrogance. This is War Marshal Threxus to human forces. We ... We surrender. Please, no more. We surrender. Fleet Commander Jisu's response was professional, with no gloating or triumph. Surrender accepted. Power down all weapons and shields. Remain in your current positions. Boarding parties will arrive shortly to secure your vessels and provide medical assistance to your wounded. Any ship that attempts to flee or reactivate weapons will be destroyed. Do you understand? Yes, we understand. Throughout the council chamber, ambassadors stood in shocked silence. The battle had lasted 4 hours. The Drakmor had lost 2,600 ships. The humans had lost 0. High Chancellor Vexren turned to look at Admiral Taiyang and Ambassador Ji Wu. You could have destroyed them all. Why did you offer surrender? Ji Wu met his eyes steadily. Because we're not monsters. We fight when we must. We kill when we have no choice, but we don't slaughter when the enemy is defeated. That's the difference between humans and species like the Drakmor. We remember mercy." Taiyang added, "Besides, those ships contained 47,000 Drakmor soldiers and crew. Most of them were just following orders. They don't deserve to die for their leader's stupidity. We'll treat them well, heal their wounded, and eventually send them home. Maybe they'll tell others what happens when you attack Earth." Vexrin looked back at the display, where human ships were already approaching the surrendered Drakmor vessels. And he realized something profound. The galaxy had been worried about the wrong thing. They'd feared humanity's weapons, their technology, their military capability. But the truly terrifying thing about humans was something else entirely. They could have been conquerors. With their weapons and tactics, they could have dominated the galaxy. But instead, they had chosen to be protectors. And that made them more dangerous than any army. 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session. The chamber was packed beyond capacity. Every species wanted to be present for what many were calling the most important gathering in Council history. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of fear. A few came hoping to profit from the situation. High Chancellor Vexrin called the session to order, his voice grave. "We gather today to address the recent conflict between the Drakmor Collective and Earth. War Marshal Threxus has been taken into custody and will face trial for treaty violations and unlawful aggression. But first, we must discuss the larger implications of what has occurred." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Several species were demanding that Earth face sanctions for their hidden military buildup. Others argued that Earth had simply defended itself. The debate was growing heated when the doors opened and Secretary General Haun Choi entered. Haun was the highest diplomatic authority on Earth. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that had witnessed decades of difficult negotiations. She walked to the human delegation's area calmly, nodded to Ambassador Jiwoo and Nari, and took her place at the center podium. "Secretary General Choi," Vexrin greeted her formally. "Thank you for coming. We have many questions about Earth's actions." "I'm sure you do," Haun replied, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "And I'm prepared to answer them. But first, I would like to present some facts that I believe the Council needs to understand." She activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing the aftermath of the battle. Drakmor ships being escorted by human vessels. Medical shuttles moving between damaged ships. Human doctors treating wounded Drakmor soldiers. "The final casualty count from the engagement is as follows," Haun said. "Earth forces destroyed 2,600 Drakmor warships. However, the actual number of Drakmor deaths was 2,014. We captured 47,000 Drakmor military personnel. All are currently receiving medical care aboard human hospital ships or in our facilities on Mars. There, wounded are being treated with the same priority as our own people would." "Receive?" Ambassador Kelris stood up. "You're saying you destroyed over 2,000 ships, but only killed 2,000 people. How is that possible?" "Because we targeted power systems and engines, not crew compartments," Admiral Taiyang explained, standing beside Haun. "Once a ship's weapons were disabled, we allowed the crew to evacuate before destroying the vessel. The deaths that did occur were primarily from critical system failures that happened before crews could escape. We regret every single one." The chamber fell silent. This was unexpected. Most species, when fighting for survival, didn't worry about enemy casualties. They certainly didn't prioritize saving enemy lives. Haun continued, "We want the Council to understand that Earth had no desire for this conflict. We have spent 50 years as peaceful members of this body. We followed the rules, respected the treaties, and tried to be good galactic citizens. But the Drakmor Collective chose to invade us, and they did so publicly in this very chamber. She looked around at the assembled ambassadors. What choice did we have? If we had surrendered without fighting, every aggressive species in the galaxy would see us as easy prey. We would spend the next century defending against invasions. If we had fought heartedly and lost, our entire civilization would have been enslaved. So we fought with everything we had. And we won. You violated the Council's trust, accused a Valkyrie representative. You built weapons in secret. You militarized your system far beyond acceptable limits. You deceived us. No, Jiwo interjected, standing up. We followed Council law exactly. We reported all our military installations as required. We simply classified them under different categories that were technically accurate. Mining equipment that could also shoot. Research stations that could also fight. We didn't deceive anyone. We just didn't advertise our full capabilities. Hong nodded. And now I want to address the real issue here. The Council's current structure is broken. War Marshal Threxus was able to declare war on a member world without consequence. There was no mechanism to stop him, no deterrent to prevent aggression. The Council talks about peace, but it has no way to enforce it. She brought up a new document on the display. Earth proposes the creation of a mutual defense coalition. Any species that attacks a Council member world will face unified response from all coalition members. No more individual invasions. No more powerful species bullying weaker ones. We stand together, or we allow chaos. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species loved the idea. Others were suspicious. A few were openly hostile to the suggestion. Ambassador Unisong from the Merchant Guild Coalition stood. I support this proposal. My people have feared Drakmor aggression for decades. We've paid tribute to avoid conflict. A unified defense agreement would protect smaller species from being exploited. It would also give Earth enormous influence, countered the Valkyrie representative. You want us to make you our protectors. We want to be your partners, Han corrected firmly. Earth doesn't seek to dominate the Council. We seek to strengthen it. Right now, the Council is weak because it relies on individual species to defend themselves. Strong species prosper while weak ones suffer. That needs to change. High Chancellor Vexerin considered this carefully. What you propose would fundamentally alter how the Council operates. It would require species to commit their military forces to defending others. Yes, Hound agreed. But it would also create real peace. Not the absence of war, but the presence of justice. Species could pursue prosperity without fear. Weak species wouldn't be prey for strong ones. And aggressive species would face real consequences for their actions. She paused, then added, Earth is willing to lead by example. We propose the Human Defense Initiative. We will share our tactical knowledge with any Council species that wants to learn. We'll train your soldiers in defensive warfare. We'll help you build proper defenses for your worlds. Not to create armies, but to ensure no one can be invaded with impunity. The chamber was quieter now. Many ambassadors were considering the implications. A Keltorian representative stood. If Earth trains our forces, what prevents you from learning our weaknesses? How do we know you won't use this knowledge against us? Admiral Tai Yang answered this one. Because we've just demonstrated what we can already do. If Earth wanted to conquer the galaxy, we wouldn't need to learn your weaknesses. We already have the capability to defeat most Council species militarily. But that's not what we want. We came to the stars to escape war, not to spread it. Hound pulled up the final part of her presentation. Which brings me to our last point. Earth volunteers to maintain oversight of its own military. We propose a Council inspection committee with representatives from multiple species who will have full access to Earth's military installations. We'll report our capabilities accurately. We'll submit to regular reviews. We want the Council to trust us, and we're willing to prove we deserve that trust." Ambassador Nari stood and added, "We're also proposing the return of most Drakmor prisoners within 6 months, once proper peace terms are established. We don't want to keep them. We just want assurance that this won't happen again." The discussions continued for hours. Various species raised concerns, asked questions, proposed modifications. But gradually, a consensus began forming. The Council had been shaken by how easily the Drakmor had declared war and by how decisively Earth had won. Something needed to change. Finally, after 6 hours of debate, High Chancellor Vixren called for a vote on Earth's proposals. The Mutual Defense Coalition was approved by 217 species out of 300 voting members. The Human Defense Initiative received even more support, with 243 species requesting immediate training programs. War-Marshal Threxus's trial was scheduled for the following month. He would be judged by a special tribunal for violations of Council law. The Drakmor Collective itself would face sanctions and occupation by Council peacekeepers, led by human forces. To ensure compliance with new regulations. As the session ended and ambassadors began filing out, High Chancellor Vexren approached Secretary General Hound privately. "You handled that well. But I must ask, are you truly content with partnership? Your species could rule the Council if you wished." Hound smiled tiredly. "Chancellor, humans have spent 10,000 years fighting for dominance on our own planet. We've seen countless empires rise and fall. We've learned a hard lesson. Ruling through force creates enemies, not allies. We'd rather have partners than subjects, friends than vassals. Even if it means less power for Earth." "Real power isn't the ability to destroy," Hound said quietly. "It's the wisdom to choose not to. We could conquer, yes, but then we'd spend forever maintaining that conquest, crushing rebellions, fighting resistance movements. We've done that before, to each other. It's exhausting and ultimately pointless. Better to build something together, something that lasts because people want it to, not because they fear the alternative." Vexren was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your species frightens me, Secretary General. Not because of your weapons, but because of your philosophy. You've turned restraint into strength. It makes me wonder what else humanity is capable of." "Hopefully," Hound replied with a slight smile. "You'll never need to find out." 6 months later, Ambassador Nari Park was giving a tour of Earth to a group of young alien diplomats. They were visiting Geneva, site of the old United Nations headquarters, now a museum. The tour included many historical exhibits, but Nari saved the most impressive for last. She led them to a massive vault built into a mountainside. The door was 10 meters thick, covered in warning symbols in hundreds of languages. Armed guards stood watch, though they nodded respectfully as Nari approached with her guests. "This is the War Memorial," Nari explained. "Inside this vault, we've stored the weapons we chose not to use. The planet crackers, the genetic weapons, the systems capable of destroying entire civilizations. We built these things in darker times, when we thought such power was necessary." A young Thorn diplomat asked nervously, "Why keep them? Why not destroy them completely?" Nari looked at the vault thoughtfully. "Because we need to remember what we're capable of. These weapons represent humanity at our worst, our most fearful, our most aggressive. We keep them sealed here as a reminder of what we survived and what we chose to leave behind. Every human child visits this place during their education. We show them what we built, and we explain why we locked it away." She turned to face the young diplomats directly. "But I want you to understand something important. If anyone threatens the peace we've all built together, if someone attacks the Council or tries to harm the species we've sworn to protect," she looked back at the vault meaningfully, We remember how to open it." The young diplomats shifted uncomfortably. One of them, braver than the others, asked, "Is that a threat?"